Here are two images of a house. There's one obvious difference, but to this patient, P.S., they looked completely identical. P.S. had suffered a stroke that damaged the right side of her brain, leaving her unaware of everything on her left side. But though she could discern no difference between the houses, when researchers asked her which she would prefer to live in, she chose the house that wasn't burning. Not once, but again and again. P.S.'s brain was still processing information from her whole field of vision. She could see both images and tell the difference between them. She just didn't know it. If someone threw a ball at her left side, she might duck, but she wouldn't have any awareness of the ball or any idea why she ducked. P.S.'s condition, known as hemispatial neglect, reveals an important distinction between the brain's processing of information and our experience of that processing. That experience is what we call consciousness. We are conscious of both the external world and our internal selves. We are aware of an image in much the same way we are aware of ourselves looking at an image, or our inner thoughts and emotions. But where does consciousness come from? Scientists, theologians, and philosophers have been trying to get to the bottom of this question for centuries without reaching any consensus. One recent theory is that consciousness is the brain's imperfect picture of its own activity. To understand this theory, it helps to have a clear idea of one important way the brain processes information from our senses. Based on sensory input, it builds models, which are continuously updating simplified descriptions of objects and events in the world. Everything we know is based on these models. They never capture every detail of the things they describe, just enough for the brain to determine appropriate responses. For instance, one model built deep into the visual system codes white light as brightness without color. In reality, white light includes wavelengths that correspond to all the different colors we can see. Our perception of white light is wrong and oversimplified, but good enough for us to function. Likewise, the brain's model of the physical body keeps track of the configuration of our limbs, but not of individual cells or even muscles, because that level of information isn't needed to plan movement.
The universe is composed of interacting energy fields, some at rest and some in motion. It is, in and of itself, one gigantic hologram of unbelievable complexity. According to the theories of Karl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford University, and David Bohm, a physicist at the University of London, the human mind is also a hologram, which attunes itself to the universal hologram by the medium of energy exchange, thereby deducing meaning and achieving the state which we call consciousness. With respect to states of expanded or altered consciousness, such as gateway uses, the process operates in the following way. As energy passes through various aspects of the universal hologram and is perceived by the electrostatic fields which comprise the human mind, the holographic images being conveyed are projected upon those electrostatic fields of the mind and are perceived or understood to the extent that the electrostatic field is operating at a frequency and amplitude that can harmonize with, and therefore read, the energy carrier wave pattern passing through it. Changes in the frequency and amplitude of the electrostatic field, which comprises the human mind, determines the configuration, and hence, the character of the holographic energy matrix which the mind projects to intercept meaning directly from the holographic transmissions of the universe. Then, to make sense of what the holographic image is saying to it, the mind proceeds to compare the image just received with itself. Specifically, it does this by comparing the image received with that part of its own hologram which constitutes memory. By registering differences in geometric form and in energy frequency, the consciousness perceives, as psychologist Keith Floyd puts it, contrary to what everyone knows is so, it may not be the brain that produces consciousness, but rather consciousness that creates the appearance of the brain.
Black holes really are kind of getting to the very heart of our physics, and I believe that they're kind of showing us the way that eventually we're going to need different physics and new physics. People ask questions like what happens inside a black hole, or even what happens at the very boundary of a black hole, the event horizon, where light is absorbed. And honestly, our physics is telling us a lot of contradictory things. And our image of what an event horizon really is may be changing. People like Stephen Hawking and Leonard Susskind have recently come up with this idea that a black hole should not be able to destroy information. Okay, what do we mean by information? Information can be almost anything. You know, all of the different atoms in my body have angular momentum, they have charge, they have mass, there's all sorts of little bits of information that make me me. So instead of anything really ever falling into a black hole, what the event horizon may be is some sort of shell of information. Things are stopped in time as they fell into the black hole. And right at that boundary, there's almost kind of a sphere, a two-dimensional surface that somehow contains all the information about what's inside the black hole. And this reminded people of something that humans invented called a hologram. Now, a hologram is a two-dimensional object. You can make it out of glass or a piece of film, and you shine a light through it, and all of a sudden, there seem to be three-dimensional projections. And the idea is that, are we looking at some fundamental way the universe stores information? Around a black hole where space and time have been crushed out of existence, could there be a shell of information, something like a hologram? And a lot of people began to wonder, maybe that's the way the universe works on a larger scale. Maybe black holes are showing us intrinsically what the underlying nature of reality is. That there really is a two-dimensional surface of something that contains all information about the entire universe. Maybe in some way we are part of this giant hologram. And I should mention that the word hologram in no way implies that somebody made the hologram. We're just talking about the universe may really be information contained in a two-dimensional structure, not the three dimensions that we're aware of now. This all sounds incredibly strange, and I'm always a little bit afraid to even talk about it. But I think that the thing to really kind of gain from this is that black holes are staring us right in the face. We're now observing them. They're right there. And we cannot really describe how the universe should work with one of these things. They don't make sense. The universe shouldn't be able to lose information. So how do you get information when space itself are bent in and nothing comes out? Black holes may be the key to where the next physics has to go. We all know that we need a next Einstein, a next quantum theory, something that actually describes how gravity works in very intense situations like a black hole. Now we're actually observing black holes well enough that we really have to get on this. We really have to figure out how the universe works around one of these things. And we may end up learning what the universe itself really is.
So in 1974, Stephen Hawking basically said that all matter and information that goes into a black hole is lost forever.
And I guess Susskind wasn't too happy about this.
No way, he actually wrote a book about it. The Black Hole War, my battle with Stephen Hawking to make the world safe for quantum mechanics.
Yeah, right.
Could you describe this battle and why it was a war you felt it was necessary to fight?
As I said, Stephen was basically a gravity physicist, a general relativist, and he believed in the principles of general relativity. Nothing else mattered. I was always a quantum physicist, and when Stephen said that it looks like black holes, because they lose information into them, violate the principles of quantum mechanics, I and a couple of my friends, in particular a physicist by the name of Gerard de Hooft, a very famous Dutch physicist, said, no, that can't be right. And we didn't know why he was wrong, but we knew he was wrong. He held his ground, we held our ground, but eventually we began to make sense of in what way Hawking was wrong. It's a basic principle of the way we think and of classical physics that a thing can only be in one place. If it's here, it's not there. If it's there, it's not here. What was going on is that in some funny sense, quantum mechanics was requiring that a thing could be, in a sense, in two places at the same time.
What? How is that even possible? Yeah, what's he talking about?
We began to get the idea, in particular at Hooft and myself, that what was going on the horizon of a black hole was similar to a hologram, that the surface of the black hole, the horizon of the black hole, was like the photographic film, and what fell into the black hole was like the image created, the three-dimensional image created.
So their idea was that any matter that falls into a black hole remains trapped inside, but at the same time an exact copy is perfectly preserved on the horizon. This by itself was a revolutionary idea, but Susskind and his crew soon realized that the holographic principle doesn't necessarily only apply to black holes.
Once we understood that what was inside, falling into the black hole, inside the black hole was a kind of projection of the horizon, we began to understand the idea was more general, that the entire three-dimensionality of space is a projection of a very distant horizon that surrounds us. And not the horizon of a black hole, it's the horizon of the universe. And instead of being on the outside of it, like we would be if there was a black hole here, we're on the inside of it. And so you could say that we on the inside of it are a projection of this film-like thing that's on the boundary of the universe.
So while we stand here in the Good Stuff studio, and while you watch this video at home, or at work, or in prison, waiting trial, whatever you're doing, we are actually projections of equivalent versions of ourselves that live on the outer surface of the universe. Whatever happens here happens there, and vice versa, and vice universa.
Wait, so I'm a hologram? All of this isn't real? Oh my god! Is the real me just a battery that's powering a universe-wide simulation?
No, Matt, you're not in the Matrix.
There is no spoon.
It's just that you're here, and you're sort of over there as well.
Well, if we're here and also there, are we the projection or is the outer surface the projection? Which one's reality? Are we on the inside of the universe? Or have we actually been in the outer surface this whole time?
That's your choice. You decide what you, but the mathematics says they're equivalent.
I feel like I'm here. I don't know.
Yeah, but so does your image on the boundary. It's also saying, I feel like I'm here.
Oh, man.
So, right. But the mathematics doesn't care which way you think about it. It says there's an equivalence. That's about all we can say. Physicists do not like the word reality. We may talk about it all the time, but when it comes down to it, we really don't want to say this is reality and that's not reality. There are mathematical connections between things, and that's got to be it because we don't have insight enough to be able to tell which is reality.
It's pretty wild.
It is pretty wild.
And not surprisingly, the idea of the holographic principle was initially met with a bit of skepticism.
This was a wild idea at first. Nobody really accepted it. I think for the most part, the reaction of our colleagues were, those guys used to be smart guys. I think they've lost their marbles. The world is a hologram? That's too crazy. Eventually, the idea got put into a very, very precise form by a young Argentinian physicist by the name of Juan Maldacena. Juan Maldacena is now, one of the great physicists of the world, maybe the greatest physicist of the world. It's now gone from being a wild-eyed conjecture to being an everyday working tool of physics.
After Juan Maldacena's mathematical realization of the holographic principle, Hawking conceded defeat. He admitted that he was wrong about information being lost in a black hole, calling it his biggest blunder in science.
So how does Susskind feel about Hawking after he admitted he was wrong?
All of these ideas were put in place as a response to a very, very deep question that Stephen Hawking asked. He was incredibly perceptive to see that there was this tension there, and all of the ideas of modern physics that are exciting all of us now trace right back to his question. So to say he was just wrong is a pale reflection of what really happened.
So does Stephen Hawking now fully support the holographic principle?
As far as I can tell, he supports these ideas, but that's kind of irrelevant because the rest of the physics community does. We get old. Stephen gets old, I get old. At some point, it doesn't matter what he or I think.
Okay, so the physics community generally accepts this as a plausible theory. And that's all well and good, Craig. But how can something so insane sounding be true?
Well, maybe you just don't understand it. I don't understand it.
Well, why is this stuff so hard to understand?
When people ask me about these things, I always give the same answer. Our neural wiring, the thing that we inherited from our ancestors, and I don't mean our ancestors, our grandparents, I mean, the worms in the muck through evolution. The neural wiring that we inherited was not built for quantum mechanics. It was not built for higher dimensions. It was not built for thinking about curved space-time. It was built for classical physics. It was built for rocks and stones and all the ordinary objects, and it was built for three-dimensional space. And that's not quite good enough for us to be able to visualize and internalize the ideas of quantum mechanics and general relativity and so forth. So instead, what do? We use mathematics. Eventually in time, we develop intuitions out of the abstract mathematics. We get better at it, and we begin to think that way. But that can be extremely frustrating when trying to explain to the outside world. The outside world, by and large, has not had that experience of going through the rewiring process of converting their minds into something that can deal with 5 dimensions, 10 dimensions, or the quantum mechanical uncertainty principle, or whatever it happens to be. And so the best we can do is to use analogies, metaphors. And the holographic principle is a metaphor. The way I've described it in terms of a hologram is not precise. It's not exactly accurate. It's close, it captures some of the ideas, but there's a whole raft of mathematics behind it that I can't easily transfer to you.
Yeah, I should have paid more attention in math class.
Well, it wouldn't have been enough.
No, yeah, I know what you mean. Like when learning about relativity, just learning about how time works and how time is a dimension.
Yeah.
It took me a while to fully grasp.
No, you would get it. You would get it if you
Yeah.
took a couple of years. I mean, I don't know what your level of mathematics is, but
I was good in high school. So.
that's good enough. If you're good in mathematics at high school, then with a year or two of effort, these ideas could be conveyed.
Yeah.
But to do so in my living room here in an hour, all we can do is try to use metaphors and analogies.
Right.
So it's possible that after a few years of rigorous mathematical training, we could potentially understand these principles. Still, Susskind admits that not everyone will be able to understand, or even want to, and that's okay.
In my experience, there's a lot of people out there who understand that they can't understand it and are very glad that somebody can. There's also people who are very resentful. They're resentful, they think there's a conspiracy that the priesthood of science is hiding something.
Can you tell them no? Can you tell them
No, we're not hiding anything. We want more than anything else that people should listen to us and understand what we're saying. But we're stuck with this obstacle of mathematics.
So if you want to understand the universe beyond the basic stuff that we can see and touch, you got to learn the math.
Right, but it's also okay if you don't know the math, because there are people out there who have devoted their lives and years of research to understanding this stuff, and they're doing a pretty good job. Science is a constantly evolving field, but there is plenty that they do know, and they're getting better and better at making predictions.
So what does Susskind think is in store for the future of physics and our understanding of the universe?
Yeah, I think this holographic idea is permanent in the vocabulary of physicists. It's in the textbooks, it's going to stay in the textbooks. But how the whole story is going to play out, the universe, how quantum mechanics fits together with gravity and so forth, I think there's only one thing that's certain, that there will be surprises. Some of them will come from experiments, some of them will come from giant telescopes, and some of them will come from mathematical and theoretical thinking about how things fit together. And I think one can be pretty sure that anybody who thinks that they have the final answer now is smoking something bad. Or maybe they should be smoking something better.
Don't do drugs, kids.
I think there's every reason to believe that the future will hold surprises. So for me to sit here and to predict how physics will evolve in the next century or so is total waste of time, because I'll be wrong.
Good answer.
So there's still a lot to be discovered, but there's no way to know how our understanding of the universe is going to change in the future.
And as we've learned throughout the episode, it's hard to even know what's happening right now.
So what are we supposed to do?
Well, I guess we just have to trust that there are people out there who are diligently working to figure out how our world works, where we come from, and where we're going. And at the same time, we have to be a little cautious dealing with people who claim to have all the answers.
Good summation, Craig.